The not-so-recent end of Attack on Titan got me thinking. No, not about the surprising amount of people that support fictional genocide. I was thinking about how one of the most culturally relevant stories of the last decade hinged on a twist that took place more than 50 episodes into the series, and how that twist was made possible by one of my biggest love-hate tropes in fiction, memory loss. While it's true that a lot of my favorite stories involve the use of memory loss, it can also be a very cheap method of manipulating an audience. It was time to reconcile with this and ask an important question. Is memory loss dumb writing? Well, like with most tropes in fiction, the answer is sometimes. Memory loss can be a very effective writing device when done right. Characters being kept in the dark by their own memory or lack thereof is an easy way to keep the audience in the dark as well. If the audience is aware of what the character forgets, the possibility for intriguing dramatic irony is limitless. On the other hand, using memory loss to explain things away can feel very unearned. After looking at the use of amnesia across some of my favorite stories, I feel I've determined a set of 3 criteria to diagnose a memory loss plotline and whether it will be enjoyable for an audience. They are as follows. First, is the memory loss believable in the scope of the story's world, and are there easily digestible rules? Second, to what degree is the amnesia plot shoehorned into the story? And lastly, is the payoff worth it? Spoiler warnings ahead for One Piece, Attack on Titan, Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive novel series, and Christopher Nolan's film Memento. And yes, I realize it's insane to compare some of these in terms of author intent, but I'm making a point, God. Starting with everyone's favorite plus-size psycho, we have Big Mom from One Piece. Whole Cake Island is a Straw Hat Pirate's first real brush with an emperor, and Big Mom is downright terrifying enough to do all that build-up justice. She's leagues ahead of even Luffy at this point in the story, and her ability to manipulate souls adds a sort of existential dread to her character. Most of Whole Cake Island is the Straw Hats achieving things behind Big Mom's back, with the understanding that if they face her in a head-on fight, there's no hope of leaving the situation in one piece. When we move on to Wano, Big Mom goes from menacing to long ring, long land levels of slapstick. I know, too far, man. But suffice it to say, I was a little surprised to see Big Mom get the hot girl from the Fast and the Furious treatment.
I remember everything. It came to me like a flood.
So let's look at where this went wrong. Our first question is this believable in the scope of the world, and are there rules given to us? I'm leaning no on this one. Sure, there's some context in Big Mom's backstory that points to her being frail mentally. However, it's hard to reconcile that an absolute tank of a hockey user like Big Mom would experience amnesia from a bump to the head. Especially considering that we see Kaido jump off of a sky island in an attempt at suicide and walk away completely unfazed. It's implied that Big Mom has been in some crazy battles as a member of the Rocks Pirates and leader of her own crew, and that likely involved taking some far more powerful shots to the head than falling off of a waterfall. Even worse than the catalyst of Big Mom's amnesia is the scope. There are no rules other than she's forgotten everything and it's assumed she will probably regain her memories at some point. She's essentially a raging plot device, doing whatever the story needs to move along for an indeterminate amount of time. This speaks pretty clearly to our second point. The Big Mom memory loss plotline is entirely shoehorned in for this purpose of moving the story forward. And rounding things out with our third piece of criteria, there's next to no payoff here that couldn't have been achieved with better writing. Big Mom's amnesia-driven rampage allows Luffy to demonstrate some much-needed hockey progression and helps him break out of prison, but there's nothing new for Big Mom in terms of character development. I love One Piece to death. It's actually the only manga I still read weekly, and I hate to use it as an example of memory loss done wrong, but I have to say this one fails the test. Next, we come to the biggest plot twist in recent memory, Attack on Titan. As much as the rumbling is going down as a huge pop culture icon, the reveal of the basement will always be Attack on Titan's defining moment for me. To, 3 seasons in, have a cataclysmic twist that is made possible entirely through the forced memory loss of an entire nation is a testament to Isayama's patience and his gigantic balls as well. This was a bold move, so let's look at our 3 criteria to see why that is. First, is the imposed memory loss of all the Eldians on Paradise believable in the context of Attack on Titan's world? Maybe. The Founding Titan's ability to wipe memories from the subject of Ymir is, at the very least, convenient. It's also a bit random next to the more physical powers that we associate Titans with having. Of all the abilities the Founding and 9 Titans possess, this one feels the most a product of what the story needed. That being, Karl Fritz lobotomized the rest of the world out of the Eldian brains on Paradise so we could have our amazing twist. And while the rules for the memory wipe are pretty clear, they raise some questions about other time this power might have been used. Although I am willing to accept Aaron's personal philosophy of freedom as a reason he never used the power on Zeke or the Warriors of Marley. Why this was truly a bold writing move from Isayama comes when we consider our second criteria. The ability of the Founding Titan to wipe memories is both exposition dumped onto the audience after the fact and not alluded to in any way beforehand. This isn't the same thing as shoehorning. Isayama clearly had this planned out from the beginning, but it is essentially betting that the reveal this amnesia plot device allows will be enough to forgive its use. And I gotta say, boy was it. I can't remember ever having a twist hit me as hard as the basement did in Attack on Titan. 3 entire seasons, recontextualized in an instant. What makes Attack on Titan such a masterpiece isn't just this concept, but Isayama's execution of this concept. You can go check out M. Night Shyamalan's The Village if you want to see an example of the same concept done mediocre. The questions posed by clashing character philosophies both pre and post-reveal, as well as the natural tonal shifts from horror to mystery and political intrigue, are all more than enough payoff to forgive the use of the memory loss trope that delivered them to us. In short, Isayama's gamble that he could impact his audience enough to use amnesia as a huge plot point in his story paid off. Brandon Sanderson isn't sparse with his use of amnesia in the Stormlight archives. The trope makes up a large degree of the backstory for two of the series' three main POV characters in Shallan and Dalinar. While the writing for Dalinar is almost universally loved and his backstory is considered one of the greatest modern pieces of character writing by fantasy fans, the hype around Shallan is more lukewarm. Let's take a look at why. Using our test on Shallan's story first, the rules for her memory loss are a bit unclear. Rather than being magically induced, this is your run-of-the-mill, unreliable narrator with amnesia about horrific events that take place in her past. It's believable enough to accept Shallan, who is, well, a mess, mentally, as a realistic candidate for trauma-induced amnesia. Sanderson also ties the truths and lies in her own mind in with the ideal she must speak as a Radiant and Lightweaver, so the believability criteria is mostly satisfied. However, repressed memories that can return at any time will always be a somewhat weaker premise, no matter how well Sanderson writes it and ties it into the rules of Roshar's magic system. Even within Shallan's own character, the multiple personalities that she develops as a shapeshifter, falling into the disguises she creates and letting them develop their own agency in her mind, make much more interesting use of her powers as a Radiant. But again, Sanderson is a very good writer. The ultimate reveal that the gaps in Shallan's memory lead to are well foreshadowed. So is the payoff worth it? Yes and no. The Sanderlanche, as it's called among the fandom, at the end of Words of Radiance is one of the best across the entire Cosmere. Finding out in subsequent books that there are still more blanks to fill in with Shallan's memory takes the edge off a bit. Dalinar, on the other hand, knocks all three of our criteria out of the park. Both the conceptualization and execution of an aging general seeking to remove his own war crimes from his memory is Sanderson at his best, and really the fantasy genre at its best. Dalinar is not the victim of an amnesia plotline, but the cause of it, seeking to have his memories removed by the hands of the Midnight Mother through his own agency. If you know the Cosmere, the ability to erase a single person's memory with a monkey paw sort of drawback is a perfectly believable power for a being like the Midnight Mother to have, considering she's just a half step below a shard god. If she had, say, wiped everyone else on Roshar's memory of Dalinar's past misdeeds, then we might have more of a power scaling issue. This isn't a plot point that is shoehorned in at all either. It is a major part of Dalinar's character that he tries to rid himself of his shame and pain by erasing certain things from his memory. Sort of an eternal sunshine of the spotless mind situation. So the build-up to the ultimate reveal of what Dalinar is hiding from himself makes perfect sense, and leaves no loose ends or feelings of cheapness. And then when the curtain is finally pulled back, oh man. The 50 pages at the end of Oathbringer are a masterclass in both the impact that a reveal shrouded in memory loss can have when done right, and where to take the broken character from there afterwards. Lastly, since I've said the word shoehorn a weird amount of times, I want to shoehorn in a non-fantasy example of an amnesia plotline in Christopher Nolan's 2000 psychological thriller, Memento. Memento is the quintessential case of memory loss done right in a story. Anyone who's seen Nolan's masterpiece can attest that the use of amnesia in this instance is narratively airtight and produces one of the most gripping stories ever brought to the big screen. We experience the plot through the strict set of intervals that rule Leonard's amnesia, depicted in reverse order. This device allows the viewer to unravel the mystery at a sinking, slow burn kind of pace, each new interval recontextualizing the one before it. Unlike some of the previously mentioned examples, the rules here are ironclad. Leonard loses his memory every few minutes and must leave himself clues to move forward. These rules shape Memento like a hard magic system might in a fantasy story. Not only does Leonard's memory loss influence every action he takes, but it's also the vehicle by which the audience experiences the story. It's incredibly immersive, and the twist that it all leads up to is every bit as earned as it is mind-blowing. So what do you think? Can egregious memory loss in a story be forgiven with a good enough payoff? Or are we calling an exposition-y, we erase our memories for plot reasons kind of twist dumb? If you made it this far in the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this one, where I analyze anime and popular Western media. There will be a lot more to come.